There's so much fat in the supply chain. Yeah. Is food travelling too far? Let's give consumers the credibility. Let nature do what nature does. If we can give people the opportunity to live and work locally, that's a big tick in the box. Let's give them a home that's going to cost £80,000 for the 3-bedroom home.
Hello and welcome. This is the True Zero podcast, the next in the series. And today we have a very exciting podcast lined up for you because for the first time we have a guest, one of our customers, a true change maker. We've invited Dean Attwell, Group CEO of Oakland International, to join us. I say we've invited him. He's actually invited us here. So we're on tour today at his fantastic site just outside Birmingham. So Dean is going to join us. Dean, welcome.
Thank you. I'm Dean Attwell, co-founder, CEO of Oakland International, 25 years into the job now and still enjoying it.
Thank you, Dean. And in a complete change to the previous podcast, we've replaced the dulcet tones of Rory, Johnny and Jono and replaced them with none other than Mr. Otto Terrell. Welcome, Otto.
Potentially even more dulcet tones. Hi, everyone. Otto Terrell, Head of True Sustainability, powering True and hoping to get some businesses down to net zero.
Yes, that is actually a job promotion that we should be celebrating. So Otto recently joined the senior management team, is now heading up a team on true sustainability. So that's very exciting. Why don't we start with a brief introduction to you, Dean, and Oakland International, what the business does, and a little bit more about the site that we're in today.
Yeah, thank you. Well, so you're based today for this podcast in our Redditch site, which is where we grew up. My humble beginnings with my mum and dad first bought the site, and that was farming roots, first 3 years in a caravan. And the business has grown over, certainly since I started with my wife Sally in 1998. Over the last 25 years, we've now got sites in not just in Redditch, but in Bardon, Colville, Corby, one in Skelmersdale coming up this year, one in Nottingley coming up this year, and one in Dublin. So we've got a customs clearance business in Worksop, which is one of the largest in the UK now. We've stumbled into that one, and we have a distribution fleet extending to about 120 trucks now. So it's an interesting time. We handle about 2 million cases a week of chilled foods, and we do a lot of co-packing, which is contract packing, case mixing, date coding, tempering, and brokerage as well. We do import and export management as well, and everything in between that affects supply chain. So every retailer we service every day across the land, and every food service operator across the land in the UK and Ireland, and a little bit abroad as well. If we want to do a microgrid here, and we want to say a 6 megawatt supply internally, we have to have a 6 megawatt feed out. Well, we don't want a 6 megawatt feed out. We may want to export maybe half a meg, but they won't allow you to do that, will they?
Yeah.
It's like it's the way we've always done it from 30 years ago, that they just will not move on because they need, I don't know, they need some young people, they need young talent coming through now that actually understands what they're talking about, because they're too old. They don't get it. I think to try and convert people to become experts, this is where I think people struggle with planners, is that we're trying to you get 3 minutes to present the case in planning. When you're putting your business case forward, you can draw the written document. Then you've got all these planning committee members, plus the council members, all sat there listening to you. But you have 3 minutes to present a business case that's going to affect hundreds of people's jobs. And you've got to try and extol the virtues of the whole virtuous cycle about the renewable energy, and try and get them to understand solar and load shifting. They just don't understand, and that's not their fault. They're not the experts in that field. So they should really default to experts who can actually cast an opinion that says this is good, and that should be the overriding presumption in favour of sustainable development. We all talk about sustainability, but I don't think people understand what sustainability is. I think they all think it's planting trees or looking at flood defences. They're actually not looking at the mix. Well, you look at B Corp. We got accredited with B Corp recently. We've been working hard on that because we like the standard. It means something. It's people, planet, profit. But if you look at the what the underlying factors of sustainability is, it's economic, it's social, and it's environmental. You have to look at all three.
Yeah.
You can't just say, well, let's look at how much wind power have you got and how much off-grid energy have you got and whether you're on the journey to net zero by 2050, which I think is a ridiculously long target.
Yeah.
So we've accelerated our journey plan from, you've got 2040 and 2030, and we believe we're going to do it in 2027, 2028 on at least one of the sites. So big ask, but it can be done.
That's amazing.
So, I hope so. We've got some amazing people around us there.
Yeah, well, you certainly do. Oh, wow. That is the most ambitious I've heard so far. I think with genuine backing to it, because a lot of there are a lot of people out there trying to get the race to the quickest net zero, but there's no substance behind that. Yeah. But actually, if you think you can do it with,
well, I know we can if a few people get out of our way, and. We've got to fail fast and fail forward. We're not frightened of failing at all, because it's the only way of learning. And we always believe that staying at the front end is where we need to be anyway. So, which is, it gives us a bit of a market edge as well, because we actually, even though we didn't move on this sustainability journey for marketing and customer wins, it is actually winning as customers now. Because if you've got two customers looking at yourself, you've got a customer looking at two providers, and one broadly the same price because we're all roughly the same, and one's got very strong ESG credentials and the other one has none, or they can see that they're greenwashing, which I'm not a fan of at all.
No.
Dealing with flood defences by building a dam in another country isn't quite the answer, or planting a load of trees, 100 miles away from the city that's got all the pollution doesn't seem to make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, let's not do it. But, this sustainability journey for us is winning us hearts and minds, not only of customers and suppliers as well, but also, from our own people perspective, because you drive engagement, And actually there's a stat, and I don't know what it is, but there's a stat that says that, the big choice that people are having to make between where they work, and let's face it, we're in a competitive jobs market. So, we can all look for the best paid jobs, but we're not only looking for money, we're looking for the credibility of the workplace that we're going into. So we've got to be very cognizant of that, and we are. And we get this feedback that people choose us because of our journey plan. It's important.
You say about kind of still being able to remain economically competitive, even though you are pushing more sustainable practices in both the supply chain and your processes. But how are you keeping that kind of delta not so large? Because things like fertilizers are more expensive and sustainable agriculture is also more expensive.
Well, there's always going to be price increases, aren't there? And look, different types of farming and different types of production methodology. But, there's so much fat in the supply chain. Yeah. I'm talking supply chain, not just trucks. I'm talking about where farmers grow their crops. Are you putting the crops in the best location? Is food traveling too far? And I think there's a whole load of shifting needed, and it's going to be driven largely by consumer persuasion, because you shop. Your choices are where you shop, and if those messages are coming through, then people will have that choice of where to go. And that will drive, and how much they're prepared to pay as well, because food is still too. I know we've got some real challenges with poverty in the UK as around the planet, but food as a percentage of disposable income is still too cheap. Therefore, we have a lot of wastage. So, to answer your question in terms of how long term we become more sustainable, I firmly believe that food supply chain is going to be more regional. I think people have got to start thinking smarter. We've got to start thinking less about range and all the frills that go. We don't need 64 types of butter, for goodness sake. We just don't need it. We don't need 16 pack sizes of the same product. Let's give consumers the credibility that if you've got a long shelf life product, go for a bigger pack. If you've got something that can be frozen down, let's freeze it. If you've got something that's short shelf life that's suitable for freezing, freeze it first. Let nature do what nature does. We do a lot of work with converting buying habits from not so much consumers, because consumers will buy what you put in front of them if it tastes good and it's the right value. So let's not give consumers too much choice, because actually, if you're providing something that's healthy, I know for most families would say, well, actually, if I can buy something that is lower cost, I'm not sacrificing quality, I'm not sacrificing sugar content and buying something that's been full of preservatives. And I want to trust the brand I'm working with. We'll give them some answers on that, because freezes stuff down. Cheesecakes is a great example. Short shelf life, if you're going to produce a cheesecake and try and manufacture that fresh, you've probably got 7 days, 9 days to shift it. 3 of those days are lost in the supply chain. 2 of them are lost on the shelf at the retailer, which gives you maybe 4 or 5 days at home. If you haven't planned your meals, you're going to throw it away. So there's a real challenge. If you can manufacture in bulk, and this is just a worked example, where that same cheesecake producer can say, let's make all of my lemon cheesecakes in a big batch, and I'll manufacture those for the next 36 hours. Right? I've got only one cleaning in place routine because I've manufactured on one continuous production cycle, so I don't have to clean the lines down each time. Then I can put them into the wastage is going to be minimal because I've got only one production run. And once I've finished the products, the production run, there's maybe 50 kilos of lemon left over, but relative to the batch size, it's very, very small.
Yeah.
All of that gets frozen on the day of manufacture with 100% of its shelf life, all 12 days at that point. And then it's safe, then you transport it in full loads. There's a carbon road mile saving to wherever you want to go. So you're not eating into the shelf life. And then you can put that into storage location to your supply chain partner. In this instance, it's Oakland, but other people do what we do. And then we can treat it as chilled. If we're going to supply the chilled market, we will supply that frozen stock on the temper, as it were, chilling down to a chill stable temperature over the next 24 hours. So you as a consumer get 100% of the shelf life on the shelf. Known to reduce waste by around about 35%, known to reduce cost by up to 54%. So why would you not do it? And by the way, you don't need any preservatives.
Yeah.
So those are the type of initiatives that drive sustainability, and that's before we start looking at packaging.
Are you going through processes where you're automating some of these things and adding kind of AI technologies and various machine learning systems to help with that?
I mean, AI, I hate AI, but it scares me to death. Look, there's a part that it has to play, and I think that the parts that are really productive, that are the boring things that we should really let computers do the most of. It's things like planning where your energy is, something really, really boring but hugely important. Predicting what consumers are going to buy actually it is incredibly powerful for that. We use AI for that on meal kits, for example. And meal kits is a great way of delivering some sustainability because there is no food waste. You have a kit, we all know the major brands are. So, we're particularly with Mindful Chef, Gusto, All Plants, people like that do great products. And what you buy, you use for the meal, and that's it. You have a bit of packaging, which we're working on because then that's a big deal breaker for a lot of people. But that delivers a food wastage reduction. But we use AI because the meals change every week, and you think, well, that's going to drive a load of wastage. I wish they didn't change every week, but we do it. But that's it doesn't create as much wastage as what you think, because we are creatures of habit as humans. So it seems to work for that. So I think AI has a part to play. I'd like to think and hope it doesn't become all-consuming in our sector, heaven forbid. But automation or human assistance robotics is what we would like to be putting a lot of our attention into rather than industrial robotics. And industrial robotics is, my understanding of that is that that replaces people. Human assistance robotics just makes the job a bit easier. Mm-hmm. And we sell that to our own people that on the basis that there is and can be resistance to automation. But our purpose, with People, Planet, Profit being our target, is that we bring robotics in to make their job easier, to make them more accurate, to drive a bit of sociability into the job as well, so we can work faster in shorter hours, for example. And it also helps to drive up wages. So we're not looking at to replace people, just to make the jobs better. So I think, again, that's a big thing. It also consumes a lot of energy as well, of course. But then again, so do people, because, people working in our chilled warehouses produce heat, which we've got to get rid of.
I'm properly fanboying here. I'm sorry. I spent the last 20 years of my life trying to convince people of the art of the possible when it comes to energy and sustainability. And usually you just get a smile and a nod and okay, on your way, Chris. But this is excellent. I've actually got someone who properly understands way beyond my level of understanding. I'll have to say, Dean, the impact of combining everything and managing a full sustainability strategy. I mean, that. I know some of it's, quite a lot of it's aspirational at the moment, but just the ambition. I'm living off this.
I think people aren't challenging the status quo, and I don't want to digress too much. We're chatting here, aren't we? So, but we're a great believer in putting together a non-selfish, virtuous cycle. So, apart from our people, because we want great people working here, and to provide great people great jobs, it doesn't mean to say they have to be, all degree students. Not everyone wants to do that. Not everyone is academically minded, but they might be great parents or sons or brothers or sisters, but they actually just want a job in an area doing something constructive. So we've got to be able to give them a great job on hours that suit them. And yes, we want 7 days a week, 24 hours a day covering somehow, but we can do that because some people are nocturnal. Some people, the circadian rhythm is out there, isn't it? If people have heard of that, it's your body clock. Yeah. So let's tap into that. And then, if we can give people the opportunity to live and work locally, and a £12 an hour job, which you can't live on, they call it living wage. It's not living wage. You can't live on that. So but if we can make £12 an hour, we've tasked our team with this, and we think we can deliver this. Well, we know we can, is that, turn £12 an hour into £25 an hour, then you can get people out of poverty, because actually there's a strong correlation between child poverty, single parent families, most of which end up being the woman looking after the kids. So they can't get the job because it just doesn't work with childcare. So let's deal with all those in turn. So let's give them a job that suits and hours that suit them locally. That's a big tick in the box. Let's give them a home that's going to cost £80,000 for the 3-bedroom home on site nearby. Let's give them, that's a third the cost of what it would be anywhere else. So they've got no travel costs, they've got a third of the rental. Let's give them something off-grid in terms of energy, so their costs are 1/10 of what they would be anywhere else in terms of utilities. And let's give them free childcare, because they'll trust another woman to look after their kids if we give them the facilities, whether it be a forest school or a soft play area or just somewhere secure. So then the childcare cost is gone. There's your £25 an hour. Then you've dealt with child poverty instantly, because you have. But then the thing what I quite like about on our plan, which is evolving quite rapidly, and we've launched it already now. Actually, it's the first of its type in the world. Actually, we'll say that until someone proves it wrong. But it's the EV solution. It's the zero emission solution. So very heavily reliant on our energy procurement. This is really important to us, though. So we are a real driver now on electric vehicles for city deliveries. Hydrogen will have its place, and that will be the heavy goods vehicles. But for the local solutions, the 0 to 30 mile radius has got to be in vans. It's well proven technology. We've got 100 odd vehicles on site now that are all EVs. We understand them. So in this instance, let me just explain it in terms of how it all works, because this is quite sexy. So if you have the most difficult person to serve is going to be your Auntie Jo, who's going to be in London running a small cafe, and all she needs is 3 kilos of bacon, some fresh eggs, some cheese and some ham delivered. But she doesn't know what she's going to need tomorrow, because she doesn't know who's going to turn up. So she doesn't want the wastage. And no one's going to serve her because she's too damn small. Okay, so she's left then with either going to a wholesaler, big food service operators who are falling apart at the moment, unfortunately, and not their fault, because the pandemic's dealt with that one. But actually, it's not going to recover quickly. So in this instance, Auntie Jo can actually sign up to working with us. And if she's in London, which is a real problem to get around, of course it is, let's put the worst city we can in terms of distribution. So we'll give her the iPad, and we say to Jo, right, don't do anything. Just the supply chain that you need for your meal break, as it were. So decide what they are. Let's collect 200 product codes. So it's going to be the hams, the cheeses, the yogurts, the eggs. Anything that, if you haven't got it, it's going to cause an unsatisfied customer, and you lost income and lost footfall. Put that onto your iPad. If you haven't got internet, whatever, then we'll put Starlink in for you. Then that's fine. Dead easy to do. So what we'll do, instead of you, when you take your meals, then we will, as your orders are being placed, we will then say, okay, do nothing, just bring it through the till. We'll take care of the rest of it, because tomorrow afternoon, as long as those orders are closed off by 7 p.m. this evening, that will be replaced for you in a box that is, we have them in this room somewhere. They're an insulated box. So we will use parcel carriers through our EV network to deliver that box to your Auntie Jo store that afternoon, so that you never got any stock and you never got any wastage, you're never out of stock. And by the way, that's going to be around about 40% less road miles than the conventional supply chain, and around about 60% lower cost because there's no compound margin. So it's going to cost you less. You've got zero wastage. But the real magic happens after you've got the stock, okay? So first of all, your cafe is functioning, okay? So what will happen then, we say to you, because there's all a load of wastage in the cafes, yeah? So what we say to you, the box is there. We want it back, please. If we don't have it back, we're going to charge you for it. And you don't want to keep boxes anyway. So put all your waste food in there, all your eggshells, all your sandwiches, everything else. Okay. And then we'll collect that box. It's costing you nothing to get that box back to us. What we will get, because there are, if you add up all of the, and this is one market stat, there's in terms of non-affiliated hotels, farm shops, delis, restaurants, and convenience stores, there's 214,000 in the UK. That's before we start touching the rest of the marketplace. So if each one of those was to bring back whatever they have, whether it be sandwiches, biscuits, kitchen scraps, put into these boxes, what we get then from those 214,000 destinations is a huge mix of nutritional content. Yes, because we're going to put that into an AD plant. And what we want is that variability. And you'll get that from 55,000, 200,000 destinations. So that comes back to our site. We depackage it. We have the skills to do that. If you throw cardboard in there, that's also fine. We'll deal with that because councils don't know what to do with it, and they don't do anything with it. They just throw it to landfill most of the time. So we'll bring that back to site, put it through the AD plant, and of course, I think most people understand AD, so anaerobic digestion. So that makes a meal out of that waste, and it turns that into gas. But one of the things it does need, it needs a break crop going in there because food can be too rich for it. It can get indigestion, literally. So there's 4 byproducts that come out of an AD plant. People ignore the 4th one. I'll tell you what that is in a minute. So solid fertilizer comes out. So that will be a great tool for the local farmers because we want them to have that fertilizer, not just for their own crops, but actually most farmers, they have to have a 3-crop cycle and a 3-year break cycle. So they'll grow the wheat for 3 years.
Is that, I think I use it at home. Is that the stuff that's very high ammonia content?
Yeah,
that comes out of an AD plant.
Yeah,
I think I use it.
Depending what you put in.
Local farm.
Yeah, so you can put, if it's chicken muck going in there, then that'll be coming out pretty rich.
Very alkaline.
Yeah. But there's you can guarantee the consistency more or less of what comes out. Very valuable for farmers because then you avoid you can get organic status off an AD plant because you're converting all this into something rather than putting fertilizer on. You're putting this other fertilizer on, which is natural, semi-natural. It all depends on what you put in, of course. But they have their fertilizer that produces a better yield. We want their break crop, which is maize generally, that goes into an AD plant that helps us, probably a 30% mix. And then the other product coming out of it is liquid fertilizer. So we will feed that into an on-site vertical farming unit, which has a place on-site for our meal kits especially. So we'll be growing spinach in there, for example, and we're already producing from the methane that's coming off the AD plant, we're producing off methane generators, the energy or base load generation for the grid, the microgrid that we're employing on site. So that brings our energy cost down for, in this instance, our vertical farming operation and other occupiers on the site. And then the other byproduct, of course, is going to be, apart from energy, is going to be CO2 off the methane generation process, which people just discard that. But it's really valuable. It's valuable in terms of if you've got a vertical farming unit on site, it's very valuable for CO2 enriching the air. If you've got food preservation requires CO2 nitrogen mix, let's put the CO2 into the boxes, because it helps food preservation. So let's not waste it. But in this instance, we're focusing on vertical farming because we want, spinach on steroids, and the steroid is CO2. So they've got cheap electricity, they've got CO2 enrichment, they've got, 20-25% improvement in yield. So the vertical farming people are really happy with this yield. And by the way, we'll give them an offtake agreement into someone like Mindful Chef who's going to buy all this fantastic high quality spinach to go into their meal kits that then go delivered to people's homes. But then, of course, you've got the vertical farming spinach producing very oxygen enriched air. So let's just grab that and feed that into our mushroom facility, which is an oxygen consumer, because then actually they'll feed off the same low cost electricity and stable supply, but they'll also have obviously the oxygen enriched air would improve their growth, which then makes them convert more oxygen to CO2, which gives us a high enough concentration to convert that into dry ice, which is the mechanical cooling mechanism for the Okra box, which we're sending the products out, which has got the meal kits in it, that goes back out to Auntie Joe's store. So it's a virtuous cycle, but everyone in that cycle, From the food producers, the AD plant people are very happy because they've got an offtake agreement where we're paying them probably 10-15% above market rate for this base load generation. The vertical farming people are delighted because they've got yield and they've got offtake agreements and they've got supply chain on the doorstep and they've got users there and everything is more efficient. They don't need to store the stock because we're just packing to order and we can mold the cycles around the demand. And then all the vans are full going in and going out. So you've got 100% utilisation on the supply chain.
And is this connecting the two in terms of what you spoke about before around reducing child poverty and paying well above the? Is that a result of
totally
being able to operate
100%?
This,
and thanks for noticing that. So
bringing it all back together.
Yeah, it is because if you're a producer and I was trying to sell you some space on the food park, I'd have you signing up that deal at the end of the day. I know I would because it's a no-brainer. If something's, I know they say some things are too good to be true, they're too good to be true, but actually this is true. So
well on brand.
Yeah, absolutely right. So no, it's 100%. And look, having the ability to locate on a site where not only do you have the symbiosis effect of actually you're buying the same ingredients as another 50, 60, 70 producers. So you're all buying wheat or flour in this instance, or sugar or salt, or all these things, but you'll be buying more of it. It'll be rolling in quicker, but more importantly, be coming in on full trucks. And those trucks will be leaving site full as well because we're backloading them. Yeah. Why would you have a truck coming in empty or going out empty when actually you've got a logistics solution whose job it is to make sure that happens?
It's also interesting you mentioned the kind of the logistics element of it, and I think to the point earlier we were discussing how do you remain competitively economical with other businesses who aren't following sustainable practices. It's very interesting to just hear that kind of circular economy that you've infiltrated across the whole of what your business is doing. And of course your fertilizers aren't going to be more expensive because you're using an AD plant to actually use the waste that's coming from the food you're distributing. So it seems like the logistical piece is equally as important as what you're actually making as per your investments.
Well, it is. And I think that some people question whether you can afford a sustainability agenda or a sustainability manager or being sustainable. I say you can't afford not to.
Yeah.
And I've always believed that, but actually I think you can put a lot more facts behind it nowadays. And look, if we speak for ourselves, and look, we don't have any miracle cure to doing great business. We're on a journey to great. Whether we ever get there, well, I don't think you ever get there, and people say, well, how were you successful? Well, you're not. You're just on a journey towards being better. That's how we look at it. And you'll never be good enough. Otherwise, you've got to retire, haven't you? Because you just need to stop. But I think that the journey for us is it's driven by the need to probably leave a legacy on doing business the right way. I get really annoyed with businesses I meet where it's all about the bottom line. It's the only thing that people are interested in, and how many dividends you get and this, that, and the other. But, we can prove, go through our accounts, dividends don't play a big part. I don't wear Rolex, nothing wrong with Rolex. I just don't wear them. You get mugged, don't you, nowadays? But, I think having the ability to reinvest in stuff that gets you out of bed, for me, it's making a difference and, showing that people I love a challenge, but if you say something's impossible, then okay, I'll take that one. Let's have a go. And some of these things may be, and they may be impossible. I've not found anything yet, but it may well be. But if you set your mind to it, you may lose interest in something. Maybe the dream isn't quite what the reality is, in which case you choose not to pursue it. But actually, if something is becoming and child poverty is always going to be there. There's always going to be an imbalance of wealth, and we're great at doing that. We're a tribal world, tribal planet, aren't we? But it doesn't mean to say you can't stop and try and do things better and show people that you can be good in business. It's not the old days where you got some people that at the top of the business that are very rich and they get all the posh cars and the posh houses and everything else at the expense of everyone else. That's not something that sits comfortably with me. We look in. I walk around our car park often. And actually, I take great pleasure in seeing that people can afford or trust us and their job to actually go and buy a new car. We've got the schemes, whether a car or a bike, actually. So, and that's a demonstration of confidence also that we're doing our job right, that we pay well enough. And we want to pay more. Actually, I'm a great fan of bigger wages. We work hard in what we do, so our people deserve it.
To make that kind of thing possible, I'm sure that kind of yourself and the finance teams have to crunch a lot of numbers to make sure that that still checks out as a business and you're still making those profits. But when you're casting your mind back to when you were earlier on this sustainability journey and you were still looking at the options available to yourself and all the different things you could be investing in, what was the process that you and your team put into that decision making, and how did you go about knowing what was that good starting point to make?
Great question. And we struggle with that because and again, I sound like I'm a really grumpy devil really all the time, because I'm going to say that I'm going to call out the banks on this one, because they all say we've got a green investment fund and we've got billions that's allocated to. Yeah, they have, but you know what? They want your home guaranteed. They want your grandmother's home guaranteed. And actually, by the way, we'll put something in your coffin as well, just in case you don't pay. So they're not what they say they are, and unfortunately, and that's something that needs to be addressed. I'll use an example. So solar, when that first came out, I won't say we were a relatively early adopter. We were one of the people that got a 55 pence a kilowatt hour in feed. Yeah. So that shows how early we were. But even then, 55 pence of something you didn't know existed, whether you knew it, that was a big risk for us. And it was 150 odd grand of investment at a time that, wow, that's a big decision. So we set up at that time our own environmental business. So I thought, okay, if this doesn't work, I don't want to bring down the rest of the business. And not least of all, because as a business, generally we borrow money. We borrow a lot of money, and it's good to borrow safely. But we have this rule that we never go above 50% loan to value. So the bank manager will always come and see us, and we have a great relationship with the bank, and long may that continue. That's as long as we're at 50% loan to value. We get to 90% loan to value, we've probably got a different conversation. I have to go and see them. So I don't want that to happen. But actually in our environmental business, we said, okay, we'll leverage that to 90%. So, because I don't mind that. And actually those are all safe assets, aren't they? Solar. Yeah. Everyone understands solar. I couldn't get 90% loan to value without any cross guarantees today. And it's been around for donkey's years. So they haven't moved on. So it's a great question, and one that the competition for resources, at the time, solar was 7-year payback. It still is. I think the price has got up to keep the payback the same personally, but so that's my skeptical side. But nonetheless, 7 years is still 14%. It's still good, it's good enough. And you won't find anyone in the stock market offering 14% guaranteed, will you? So why wouldn't you put solar in? Why wouldn't you do it at home? Why wouldn't you do it in every business? Frequently I'm on planes a lot, always looking a bit sad, looking at how many roofs as you're landing have got solar. So few. It's crazy. Yeah. And yet it fits perfectly with business profiles with this, midday 2-3 p.m. peak. But those decisions are really hard because, if you're a young business scrapping around for resources, I don't know many small businesses that are cash rich. I just don't, and cash is what kills business, not profits.
Absolutely.
So at the moment, or historically, incremental investments in things that we might call quite safe investments around whether solar, etc. Although back in the day, kudos to you for being one of the pioneers. But there's going to be a big jump ahead to get to that virtuous circle that you were talking about, to get to the logistics of taking that cardboard box to Auntie Joe's and getting that food waste back and all that sort of stuff. How are you going to convince the banks, or what sort of investment are you thinking is going to be required for that? I don't know whether you can share any details, but to get from the point of where you are to that end goal. Yeah,
it's a good question as well. And I don't worry about money because a good idea will always find money. So there's. I think there's never been more money available from an external investment. Genuinely, it's the least of my concerns because we've got models that work. And as they roll out, we only got to demonstrate they're working we get it working in London. There's no shortage of people that will be jumping all over this for a stake. And that's fine because actually, again, it goes back to our root belief is let's just roll quickly because there's enough there for everybody. The money markets can make their money because all they're interested in is money. That's fine. We don't want a 14% ROI. we'll give them 14% ROI. That makes them very happy, and we just want them to be happy anyway because we want to borrow more money off them or get them to invest. What we want to be able to do is roll out quickly. So, people say, well, some of the ideas, we're talking about them freely here because actually the speed at which we work is the best patent that we find that we have, really. But, it does require a lot of cash, but it's cash tied up for all the right reasons, though. And it's self-generating as well. So if you've got, for example, the food service network that is launching with, the zero emissions network and the next day delivery solutions, there's really good margins in that, actually, for all involved, not just for us. I mean, our margin for supply chain is okay. We try and make 6%, which isn't a lot for what we do, for a high risk, high service industry. Plenty of other people, big brands making sort of 12, 15, 20%, and some brands, bigger brands, don't pay the taxes. So we all know what they're like. So, but I'm not going to name and shame.
It's unraveling quite quickly.
I know. I mustn't digress.
We get on to the taxes.
But no, I think it's this, the growth, the ability to grow, I don't think will be restrained by cash. And there are different ways. Like if we were pushing money into depots and building a £30 million depot, we're not going to spend £30 million on a depot. We're going to get the landlord, the property investor will put that £30 million in. We will just put the rental agreements and we'll rent that space. So someone else's cash is tied up, and our job is to make a margin on the per square foot rate that comes out of that. So, but no, I don't see the next 3 to 5 years that changing in terms of.
So you don't see us you needing to get to a point and then a massive acceleration into doing it very quickly or something like that, or is it you're just going to keep continuing the same sort of level of innovation and implementation?
We're looking to grow faster as a business. We can do that with our own financial plan. Will take care of that. But people riding on the back or alongside us, and we're a collaborator, as you know, so we will. A lot of people, I'm hoping, will do exceptionally well as a result of some of the journey plans that we lay down. And they will find their own funding streams quite comfortably, and they've demonstrated they can do that. There's the ultra-fast delivery people are a case in point. That hasn't worked out. That wasn't our doing, but the market shifted. But, they capitalised at 500 million just to launch in the UK. So there's big money out there. So it's there and it's available for the right initiatives. And the way we roll out, within 6 months, once they've got a model that works, they'll find it.
There's a mindset that you've got to move away from, as all industries, is that you need to do this behind closed doors so that you are protecting your competitive advantage or something like that, perhaps. That actually collaboration is going to be the key to ultimately solving the planet, and it's got to be industry collaboration. And there are loads of industries coming together. We work with partners in the food and hospitality sector, and they're coming together really successfully. But there are certainly industries where it's a lot harder to get that sort of understanding that we're all in this, and like it's you just can't try and go it alone. But yeah, I think that's
it's a crucial word, that collaboration. People talk it, but they don't do it, and that's another frustration of the industry. Yeah, is that we can sit around this table, not that we would because we're collaborating anyway, but you say something to each other's face, and we seem to be lacking the integrity as an industry or as a country, whereby we'll stick to what we said we've agreed at the meeting. Absolutely. Because money gets in the way, and actually that is such a short-term gain. And it's long-term pain, and that's the challenge.
To that collaboration piece as well, I think, and especially in the food and beverage sector as well, just looking at the retailers at that downstream end, and then you've got the farmers at the upstream end, and we find that, especially when we're looking at customers on that more downstream side, that their Scope 3 section of their emissions, the first thing they're going to do is put that responsibility up their chain. And what we're finding is a lot of these growers and farmers at the top of the chain are suddenly left with, I've got to change how I do everything on site just to appease the downstream end, who seem to have managed to swindle it and make it so that they don't really have to do anything. They just have to wait for those changes to be made. But I guess there's a little bit of a difficulty with all coming into a room together at all points along the chain and coming up with a solution. So those downstream ends do need to be providing that support upstream, whether it be financially or ideas or resource. And I guess you sit very much in the middle there. So what are you doing with regards to Oakland in supporting those upstream ends, and how are you making it easier for them and collaborating with them?
Well, again, great question. And it's really complicated, the framework. I'm one of those that I'm not unintelligent. I just find it really quite boring the way they've laid it all out. It's quite difficult to measure, and I'm not alone in that. And I'm a big advocate, as you know, from an environmental improvement perspective and sustainability, but I find that an incredibly boring document. Most people I speak to find it exactly the same. So let's surround yourself with exactly. So in this instance, burying your head is no good. So we haven't buried our head. We're dealing with it, and actually we said we'll take that and we'll raise it by 5 years. Thank you very much. So we will do. But actually we've got a responsibility to, and this is one thing actually we learned. Not just from our own commitments through the foundation, etc., but also with B Corporation, because we got certified in that in November, and that's People, Planet, Profit. One of the big scoring factors, if you like, with B Corp is this community that they're creating, which is basically like-minded people all coming together, wanting to do the best they can for people, for planet, for profit, in that order. Okay, and actually, profit is the last thing on the list, because actually, if you look after your people and you look after the planet, almost certainly your profits will follow. So, your business model has got to be pretty fundamentally broken before that happens. If you're in business and you focus on those first two, you should follow through with the profit.
So dare I ask, have you used True yet to showcase the economic opportunities within your sustainability?
The relationship we have with OEM and True, I think, has been exceptional. It's been an interesting journey, because actually it's a lot easier to have a discussion with people that get it and that get us. And, when I'm doing my pitch on what the passion that we believe we should be putting into our business, to find a partner that gets that, and then can complement it by saying, we get it and we can help you because we've got this. I thought, wow, okay, that's really interesting, because being able to tap into a program where you can instantly assess, because we've got one site here and we've got, by the end of 2025, we should have another 14 sites, not all big ones. So there'll be 4 big ones, and there's a whole load of small ones. And we're just with someone this morning that they want 36 sites, all small ones. But there's no point just because they're small saying, well, there's no agenda for energy, because there has to be an agenda for energy. Yeah. And that's what I really like about the True platform, is that actually within minutes almost, you can say, actually, well, what do we think the energy is going to be? And we might be wrong. This is what we think the profile might look like. And actually, if we put this mix of solar and batteries, and if we can put this green sleeving going on, there's a whole load of stuff that you guys understand that I don't want to understand at this stage, because actually I know that there's a trust factor that we've built up, that you understand the industry, you know what we're getting, where we're coming from. You have to surround yourself by experts that you trust, and that's what we think we found. So that's what we know we found. So it's great the speed at which you can assess projects and sites, because there's a temptation, if you've got one site, you think, I don't really need that. We'll go and get my own sustainability manager, and I'll do my own calculations, and I'll listen to the salesman at wind or battery and everyone else, and I can guarantee that they're not going to be selling your best interest. So I like the fact that it's very independent of the technology that's there. It can present solar for what it is in its raw beauty, and solar for what it is, or CHP or GSHP or PSC, all these acronyms I'm learning now. But there's a lot.
Confusing our listener base.
Well, apologies for that one. But it makes it sound like I'm talking what I'm talking about. But they work though, and actually the more important is, collectively, I think as this rolls out and more people take it up, we'll make mistakes. We all do, don't we? And you guys aren't perfect. We're not perfect, but we learn from each other. And actually, you fail fast, you fail forward. We learn quickly, we put it right, and actually you reassess the technology on the next one. So, if we can get 80% or 85% right on the first attempt, we'll be delighted.
I'm just going to latch on one final thing to how do we support Oakland in overcoming this this sort of legacy? We won't name and shame the planning council that is sort of, but is there data? Is there reporting? Is there demonstration? What is it that's going to get it over the line? So actually, you're going to get the tick or the green stamp of approval. Because I think you mentioned you've done it. You've got this concept potentially growing in Moldova. Why can't the UK? Why is the UK saying no to this? And we're blanketing the UK, maybe unfairly blanketing the UK, but certainly your council here. What can we do to overcome that?
Look, I think every council largely is very similar. I've not met a council yet that would say do what you want to do. It was very strange actually going into Moldova where Vera Garaz will name and applaud him because he saw me within 24 hours and he got it within 10 minutes. He said, "What can I do to support you?" And he's in touch with me on a regular basis saying, come on, let's have you here.
I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, and look, that was driven by our relationship with Moldova, which actually came from supporting Ukraine that led me to Moldova. And long story cut short, the guys in Moldova, the charity called Hope For, which I'd urge anyone to go and see or speak to if you want to know how charities should work. And they are a food distribution or humanitarian aid distribution charity that works with Moldovan and Ukrainian displaced people, fiercely advocating dealing with child trafficking, human trafficking from Moldova, Europeans' capital for child trafficking and human trafficking. And they've been the highest proportion per capita of Ukrainian refugees because it's a small country, Moldova, and they're the poorest country, and they're dealing with all this flack. So we went over there and we set up I went into Ukraine with them actually just to see whether they really did go to Ukraine, and they did actually. They're doing a great job. And then they said, well, we've got all this food and aid coming over. We've got nowhere to put it. So there was a warehouse there, and long story cut short, we did the deal on the day, and we rented that for 5 years to see how they get on with the view that they can have a hand up rather than a hand out. So now they're operating our depot free of charge, that they can ultimately, we are started bringing in food from Ukraine back into the UK via the hub so that they can get some economic returns and then they can distribute it to the people that need it. But the interesting thing, Vera Garaz, having the trade minister, he wants what we are offering, which is just to give a food park with all the associated skills, the learning and development centre, the labs, the fulfillment center, the micro starter units, all of these things, and actually keeping it off grid. There's no money needed off the Moldovan government there. We'll pay for the land, we'll employ a lot of people, we'll train a lot of people, bring those people on specific sleeved visas to the UK, train them and send them back again. And there's so much in terms of ESG credentials, there's no shortage of funds there. So that council, that government got it in 10 minutes. Our government is taking 25 years. We'll do it. So, we're on Freeport discussions as well. We've got discussions in two councils that I think will go further than the one we're in now, which is a shame because we'll go quicker where we are, but that's fine. We're location agnostic as that goes. So, actually food parks need to be around the country anyway. So the aim was major ones for us, northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest, and the Midlands. But to go back to your question, well, how do we move it forward? No one believes it can be done. And people, generally speaking, either are lacking the intelligence, lacking the passion, or lacking the foresight to actually understand it. And that's not doing them a disservice. It's just the truth. They just haven't got it. So we can sit here and moan about it, and I have done for a long time, or we can be sort of slightly controversial and just do it. So I'm of the mind to do the latter. So we've already started anyway. So it's got me into trouble with planners because we did a lot of work during the pandemic when everyone else was locking down. We because we were into internet food, our orders went 460% in the month of March and April, and we put 4 buildings up, which we wanted to get planning permission for. They were temporary buildings, but we wanted to get permission for those 4 buildings, and but they were shut. Anyway, they've come on to us 5 days after the pandemic ended and told me we've got to take them down. So yeah, that's the type of council we've got. But I'm not saying anyone else would be any different, but they just don't get it. So the idea would be, we've got our latest building that's gone up, which we're calling Unplugged for the sake of anything that's more revolutionary. But the idea on that is that we'll have solar panels, we'll have a battery, we'll have the tree management system in there. Of course, we want to do some load shifting in there, but we're growing vertical crops in there. We'll have mushrooms in there. There'll be veg processing. We do a lot of work with charity with Fair Share, so we're going to be repurposing around about 2,000 tonnes of veg per year for Fair Share. That's where I was this morning. Great organisation, and there's a lot of charities that we work with in terms of food dispersal rather than the food disposal. But then we want to be able to show the council naysayers and local residents and anyone else that wants to see, because anyone can come around our premises. It's an open door within reason. They've got to come clean and tidy, of course. But then we'll take them into that building and we'll show them what I've illustrated before. We'll show them a crop of spinach that's growing on CO2 enriched air, which is then feeding into the mushroom facility. Yeah. And that spinach and those mushrooms will be feeding onto the pizza line next door, topped up with some diced onions coming off our veg processing line that's coming off surplus waste from the food park, all fed by the AD plant, load shifting with batteries and with the freezer as well. We can move that energy around the site. And by the way, there's Joe, Freddie and George, all on the production line. They come from that little eco home that we haven't got permission for, that's also off grid, which they'll tell us to take down in 2 years' time, which is also fine. It's probably worth doing just to show that that can be done. You've got to just show them. They've got to see it. It's almost like the sacrificial lamb. Yeah. To say, look, it can be done. All right, you can put me in prison for a year, and I'll probably arrest them for a while, and we'll see how we get on. But it's it's for the greater good. I think we absolutely know that we can pay people better. We can do less harm to the environment. We can make massive improvements in terms of the environmental impact of food supply chain. Feel good about ourselves, and that's what matters.
I guess one of the key things that I picked up on from what you've said, and you've explained that. You've talked us through today just the complexity of the process that you've got going on site, and you've referenced that you can have them come onto your site and show them all of this. But both of those things, we spent an hour talking about this, and you've shown them around on a tour that I assume isn't 3 minutes. And then you're sitting in that room trying to compress all that information into something to people who don't have a background in it. Yeah. I guess is there potentially a way of pitching it and how you're wording it and how you're representing that information and that plan that's going to help those planners give a better understanding outside of just employing people with a better background in sustainability?
Yeah, I think the answer really is it's not me that's presenting it, really, because I get really angry about that. I'm quite my eldest son has taken the mantra on. He said, Dad, you're not going to go on this anymore, so I'm going to do it. So he's probably a bit more laid back than me. Look, he's probably more patient. I'm typically very impatient because I'm 57 this year. Can you believe it? Seriously, it's true. But it's
you haven't got enough grey hair.
No, I know. I've got to work hard. There's a lot to do. I still go to the gym every day, and I want to keep fit enough to do all these things. But it's really important that we're not. It's not something that. Well, apart from the fact I'm impatient, but I think we need to be a bit impatient.
Absolutely.
It's our generation. We haven't done ourselves any favours in terms of what we've done to the planet. Actually, there's time to put a few things right, and then you hand the baton to the next generation with at least a degree of hope that they can put it right, And
a corrective legacy.
Exactly. So I don't know. I think it's really difficult. And look, it's almost like, no disrespect to Biden, I quite like the guy, but he's too old. You can't live to see the consequences of your actions. We have to have younger people in charge in political circles. They're all too old there now. They're older than me. So you need the next generation, the 30s and 40s coming through, a little bit of wisdom coming at it, but the energy and the passion and determination to undo some of the damage that's been done, but take a bit more of a holistic risk-taking view to what could be done going forward. There's no food shortage in the planet. It's just a food imbalance. Yeah, and we've got some really, really dodgy practices. It just doesn't make sense. So I haven't got all the answers. I tend to raise more questions than I have answers for. But I think that my answer really is that we'll just demonstrate what we can do, and if people like it, and it works, then we've got something to shout about, haven't we?
Absolutely. No, I think in the time I've spent in working in sustainability, I think the more you look at something, the more questions do arise anyway. And eventually you've just got to go, right, I'm going to just do this. And then we'll see what happens and learn from it.
Exactly. It's like some of those moving targets, isn't it? Just go for one of them. Absolutely.